Moving into decade number 3, we're going to start with 1997's, and I alluded to this earlier, 1997's Event Horizon. One of those movies that I watched every single chance I could get, and then didn't see it for probably like 7 years or so, and then was afraid that it might not hold up. Well, guess what? I am here to tell you, as my cat jumps in my lap and scares the living shit out of me, that Event Horizon, it still humps. Oh, this movie humps hard. It is so good and it is so scary. And I mean, does Paul W.S. Anderson ever get any better than this movie? I don't think he does. It's such a scary flick. It's such a unique idea. What if we developed warp and we warped ourselves into a hell dimension? Oh, what a great concept. We get sci-fi space horror mixed in with demons from hell. What a great flick. Great visuals at the end. The scarring makeup when we get to the very end. I love it. 1998, 10 years after the first movie, we get one of the great, and like I said earlier, from here on out, the Child's Play franchise becomes the Fast and the Furious franchise. Bride of Chucky. I mean, what a delightful, funny movie. And they never stop being bangers from here on out, with the exception of that remake, but we don't really acknowledge that. None of the sequels have any business being as good as they are, but they start right here with Bride of Chucky, taking what could have just been a regular slasher franchise that they could have churned out every once in a while for, more than less the diminishing returns. Just look at what they did with Hellraiser at this point. But Bride of Chucky, what a funny goddamn movie. What a funny goddamn movie. Does Jennifer Tilly have a better role than she does as Tiffany? This is Jennifer Tilly's franchise, as much as it is Brad Dourif's. 1999 brings maybe the Citizen Kane of found footage movies, and one of the scariest movies I have ever seen. Little note about me, I used to live in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, and I saw some really scary shit out there. Blair Witch Project really kind of taps into something really primal and shakes me to my core every time I've ever seen it. Despite the fact that I went to college with Heather in this movie. Yeah, that's right. I figured out maybe like 15 minutes into this movie that this movie was actually fake because I knew the woman who was the main character. She and I both went to the University of the Arts. Her last year, my first year, we had a class together. But this flick, it does something to me. It scares me. It gets into my head in a way that not a lot of movies can. Is this the Citizen Kane to found footage movies? Yes. I don't think there's any way you have the next 25-ish years of found footage movies without the success of the Blair Witch Project. All right, now here's where we kind of start moving into, for me, the roughest decade of horror that there is. The 2000s sucked to the point that I bailed out a lot. I stopped watching a lot of horror movies because so many of them, if they weren't J-horror that I watched imported on VHS, I wasn't really into it. It doesn't help that we start off with, in my opinion, the best movie of the entire decade, that being the year 2000's Gingersnaps, which is the best werewolf movie I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, it's kind of Company of the Wolves, Gingersnaps, The Wolfman, and if I can ignore the fact that John Landis made it, American Werewolf in London. Those are kind of it as far as werewolf movies for me. Not a lot of other ones really hit. So imagine my surprise when I watched Gingersnaps for the first time and fell in love with this movie. It is the epitome of good independent horror. It takes a subject matter that I can't stand and produces a chef's kiss. You go watch this movie. I mean, it's kind of obvious why I like this movie. It's so good. It's so good. It takes something that I can't stand and makes me love it. So we're kind of moving into that realm where these are movies that didn't come out in the US, but they still came out in this year. And like I said, the 2000s sucked for horror. So 2001, we get Pulse, which has one of the scariest things that I've ever seen in a movie. There's one scene in particular where a ghost is introduced that is eerily reminiscent to something that I have seen in real life with my own ojos. And the way it presents itself is, it's bleak, it's dark, it's sad. And I feel like that's kind of what makes me feel so connected to this era of Japanese horror. Because we're gonna move into the next year, 2002, it's Juan, The Grudge. What a sad, sad movie. There's something that the American adaptation just doesn't really get. Even though it is directed by the same person, it still kind of walks away with a happy ending. Juan does not. What a sad, sad movie. There's something that the American adaptation just doesn't really get. Even though it is directed by the same person, it still kind of walks away with a happy ending. Juan does not. Oh boy, does it not carry out with a happy ending. This movie is sad to a fault, and I love it for that. I love this movie. It is so scary. It is so scary. It taps into that thing that, much in the same way that Blair Witch did, where it just kind of right into my soul with scary stuff that I still have that kind of like 20 years on, just like, I'm a little hesitant to, I'm looking over my shoulder in ways that I wasn't before I saw this movie. 2003, again, not out in the United States yet, but another stinker of a year. It's A Tale of Two Sisters, where we kind of move into a little bit of kind of ghosty territory, while as also kind of being a family drama at the same exact time. In 2004, the next installment in the Child's Play series, it's The Seed of Chucky. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the child of Chucky and Tiffany is basically a trans kid. For 2004, where we've got to deal with subject matter that today is so prevalent and important, a movie that kind of respects sexuality and gender roles in ways that we can't today. My God, this movie is so good. It's just as funny as Bride of Chucky, if not funnier. And you can see how much fun Brad Dourif and Jennifer Tilly have making this movie. I would just love to be in the sound booth when they are recording their lines. I hope they did it together and they just kind of hung out and just had a good time. 2005 gives us The Descent. Brutalist horror movie. I think this movie just really gives you something delightful about knowing that no one's going to get out of this one. Side note to 2005 though, there is a short film based on The Call of Cthulhu, actually called that, and it's a silent movie. And I almost went with that as my pick, but because it's not a full feature film, I couldn't justify myself doing that. Probably the best adaptation of that story we may ever get. I highly recommend you going out of your way trying to find it. 2006, it's The Wicker Man. Is it a good movie? It almost becomes a good movie. But it's got a great performance by Nick Cage, which I feel like elevates it like from like a C movie to a solid B. Pun, absolutely unintentional. As far as remakes go, it's pretty solid. Do we lose the gravitas of not having Christopher Lee in it? Yes, we do. But Nick Cage, a lot of people, and this is going to be a weird metaphor, a lot of people like to rag on Ryan Howard of the Philadelphia Phillies for always swinging for the fences, which led to him having a very high strikeout rate. But when you bring in a power hitter, you always want him swinging for the fences. And Nick Cage, he's always playing to the back row. Definitely doesn't in this movie. And that wraps up decade number 3. The 10 movies from our third decade are 1997, Event Horizon. 1998, Bride of Chucky. 1999, The Blair Witch Project. 2000 brings us Gingersnaps, one of the, if not the best werewolf movie ever made. 2001, Pulse. 2002, Juan, The Grudge. 2003, A Tale of Two Sisters. 2004, Seed of Chucky. 2005, The Descent. And 2006, The Wicker Man. Well, hello everybody, it's Ace in the future, editing this video currently and realizing how much it really got away from me as I was talking. Lots of long-winded answers, especially the further I went into the video. So I'm going to be cutting this up into 3, maybe 4 different videos that I'll be releasing every other day throughout the week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, whole week's worth of my thoughts on every horror movie from every year that I have been alive. So I'll see you soon for part 2. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and head down below, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more Star Trek and horror movie based content, and never forget, live long and prosper.